Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this panel, Scaling Asia's Renewables. My name is Yuliang Chang. I'm with Temasek's China investment team. It's a real pleasure to be here. Believe many of you had already a full and insightful morning, so thank you so much for bringing your energy and curiosity into this session. And if you're starting to feel a little bit of a late morning slowdown, don't worry. Hopefully, this panel will serve as your mental espresso. Just before we get started, a quick housekeeping. Ms. Jiang will be speaking Mandarin from the video, so please make sure you have your headset ready. Today, we are joined by two distinguished leaders who are actively shaping Asia's low-carbon future. We have Mr. Takanashi from SMBC Group. We also have Mr. Jiang from CATL, who are joining us from the video. Before we dive into our discussion, I'd like to invite both of our speakers to introduce themselves and share a little bit about their focus areas. Mr. Takanashi, may I ask you to start?
Yes, thank you. My name again is Masa Takanashi. Thank you everyone for your time to attend this. I'm the Group Chief Sustainability Officer of SMBC, which is one of the largest financial institutions in Japan. SMBC itself has businesses around commercial and investment banking, leasing, credit cards, asset management, and consulting as well. What we do around decarbonization is obviously we do financing, but not just that. We provide advisory services on decarbonization plans and disclosures as well. And also actually provide. We actually have a dedicated team that is focused on partnering with clients that have decarbonization solutions and that can provide them to the clients that are in need of those solutions. So that's what we do.
Thank you. Mr. Jiang, could you also share a bit about yourself as well? Thank you.
Good morning. I'm from CATL. I'm Jiang Li. I'm also chairman of the company's Sustainable Development Committee. CATL is an innovative company in new energy. We are a global leader in new energy technologies and innovation. Our battery has been ranking #1 in the world for 8 consecutive years. Our storage battery has also been ranking #1 in the world for 4 consecutive years. We are committed to contributing our effort to decarbonization in technology and innovation. Thank you.
First, I guess let's turn into Mr. Takanashi. We all know that building a low carbon economy has been the priority across Asia. But I guess each country's strategy and the pace are quite different. So from your observation, which forms of energies are you mostly focusing on? And what kind of key changes and trends that you are seeing from Japan's low carbon effort?
Well, I think it's great timing for you to ask this because the Japanese government has recently come out with what they call their strategic energy plan. It's their 7th one. They create one roughly every 3 years. In the latest version, obviously external conditions have changed since the last one. Obviously, we now have impact from Russia, Ukraine, and Middle East. Also, we are seeing a growing widespread adoption of AI as well. So they actually highlight that at the very beginning. And taking that into account, the government obviously aims for a kind of balanced energy mix. Firstly, maximizing the adoption of renewable energy as the primary source. But they also stress that they would like to avoid excessive reliance on any specific energy source. They come out with numbers for 2040. So with renewables, as of 2023, it was 23%, and they would like to increase that to 40 to 50% by 2040. And nuclear, obviously, because in Japan we had a huge earthquake, we have basically stopped nuclear power plants, and it was like 8.5% was the proportion as of 2023, but they are now aiming that to increase to roughly 20%, I think it was, by 2040, and thermal power, which is about 70% now, going down to 30 to 40%. But specifically, in addition to when we talk about the renewables, it's not just conventional renewables, but what they are now focusing on is advancing technologies like perovskite, which is a kind of the thin light solar panels. Also, floating offshore wind is another focus. I think the government is focusing on geothermal is another thing, and hydropower as well. But last but not least, I think hydrogen is another area that the government is still very, very focused on. We are very aware that there has been a lot of news around, project suspension, especially around hydrogen production. But I don't think we do have the luxury of just giving up hydrogen. We definitely need that for achieving carbon neutrality, and at SMBC we feel the same thing, same way too.
Understood. Thank you. Hydrogen, of course, is often seen as a promising, but probably still at early stage energy solution. So what do you think could be the major demand side and the supply side drivers that could accelerate the commercialization and the wider adoption of hydrogen in Asia?
Yes, maybe if I could say that, firstly, the reason that we think that hydrogen is very important is because of the potential to utilize across a very, very wide range of fields. And for demand side drivers, for instance, in Japan and Korea, I think a lot of people are focused on power generation using hydrogen. I think there was some talk about in the earlier session as well. And mobility is also a very, very large sector. For other regions in Asia, I think the chemical sector and to a lesser extent maybe steel sectors also have a potential. But for this to happen, I think there are three key points, but which I think everyone knows. But first of all, cost reduction is very, very important. Although costs are expected to decrease in the long run because of technological advancement and also economies of scale, at the beginning, in the short run, a strong financial and non-financial support from the public sector together with partnering with the private sector is essential. And or else we unfortunately will lose momentum. And unfortunately, we are seeing that happening in some projects already. At least in Japan, the Japanese government has initiated what they call a contract for difference subsidy system, and they are talking about procurement across various industries and companies, and also, for instance, carbon neutral ports and complexes. This won't be able to be completed without the support from the government as well. And second point, I think, is policy and regulation, which I think people talked about earlier on as well. At least in Europe, you see several regulations related to hydrogen already, and this is boosting demand. And if these regulations or policies could be spread around the globe, that would have an impact on demand side as well. And I think in Europe, they are also kind of determining a blue hydrogen as well, as opposed to just green hydrogen. So that might be a way to reduce cost as well. And third point, technology. Obviously, the sectors that I mentioned earlier, I think are still in experimental stage. Implementation of these technologies is very, very important. So that's on the demand side. I think the title of the session was a value chain approach. So I think there's demand and supply, but there's transportation in the middle for hydrogen. So infrastructure, I think, is very, very important, especially for hydrogen, related to transportation, storage, and end-use application. These could be ships, pipelines, tanks, refueling stations. By the way, Japan plans to invest approximately, I think it was about 100 billion US dollars over the next 15 years to build a hydrogen supply chain. So the infrastructure is very important. Supply side, I think if demand increases, supply would increase, but we also need technological advances to improve efficiency and create scale. So that's going to be a driver as well. There are people that say that the cost of green hydrogen production through electrolysis could actually potentially decrease by 30 to 50%. If that could be happen, that would be a big driver on the supply side as well.
Very interesting. I guess now let's go over to Mr. Jiang. I guess China has adopted a diversified approach to address renewables, promoting multiple forms of renewables from wind to solar to hydrogen to hydropower, etc. And in this ecosystem, battery and storage technologies has played a critical role in balancing and coordinating with the grid. And CATL clearly stands as a global leader in this space. So, Mr. Jiang, we know that lithium battery technology is mature and commercially scaled. So what kind of new development area and trends do you foresee for the lithium battery sectors?
Okay.
Thank you very much for your question. Talking about lithium battery development, it has been around for more than 10 years. It has been increasingly widely used in transportation and as a power source. In China, for example, EV penetration has already exceeded 50%. It is still growing very fast. If we look at the market numbers in Q1 this year, we still recorded 40 to 50% growth compared with the same period last year. Whether it is passenger cars or commercial vehicles, electrification is the obvious trend. At the same time, we can see that while lithium battery technology is developing, it is increasingly used not only as a power source for transportation, but also as a storage system. It's also being used in storage in not only in China but also in Europe, Southeast Asia, and the US and the Middle East. Its market share is also quickly increasing. I mean, in the storage market, in the next 5 years, we predict a 30% annual growth, which is pretty high number. Aside from power, energy supply, and storage, lithium battery is also widely being used in engineering, machinery, shipping, and aviation, as well as in other tools and machines. The whole world, the whole societies from all walks of life are undergoing a quick process of electrification and leveraging the innovation spillover. In future, I think that is the major trend. In future, we will transit from the commercialization of new energy to the new stage that all industries are adopting new energy. So in every industry in future, clean energy is going to provide energy source, not only transportation, industrial, but also like agriculture, building, etc.
See as the key drivers that will continue to propel the lithium battery sector going forward?
I believe that if you ask about the main driver force for lithium industry, I think essentially it is still the overall demand from the society for decarbonization, because globally the climate change is now being more intense. All countries have launched their carbon neutrality goals. China, for example, has already announced its 30-60 carbon neutrality and carbon peaking roles. And for Europe and the Middle East and Asian countries, the countries have all launched their goals.
So this is the first difference. The second is the technology advances, as we mentioned before. After 10 years of development, the lithium batteries industrialization has been fully realized, and the energy density has been increased by 2.3 to 2.4 times. and the charging efficiency has improved by 5 times, and productivity has been improved and cost has been decreased by 90%. So the industrialization of the new energy is still on the road. New emerging technologies are coming up in terms of the product competitiveness, energy density, security, safety, etc. We've seen apparent progress. So I believe innovation and technology innovation is the true driver for industry development.
What are the largest challenges that the hydrogen technology needs to overcome so that in order to reach the stage of maturity and commercialization that the lithium batteries have achieved today?
Yeah. Again, if I can split it into three areas, the production stage, the transportation stage, and the application stage. On the production stage, undoubtedly, I think is the electrolyzers. Energy efficiency improvement is still not there. Durability, I think, is also very important for these. So that's one. Transportation, obviously, I think some people would know there are various ways of transporting hydrogen, but if you're going to liquefaction of hydrogen, if you're going to liquefy that, that's one technology that's you know, it's there, but it's still not efficient. So that's one. If we're going to change it to ammonia and transport, ammonia cracking is also one thing that we still need, technological advancement. So that's also important as well around transportation. Application, there are various challenges around various sectors, industries. For instance, if it's power, I think there was a discussion about coal-fired firing of hydrogen or ammonia. It's still started, but it's still co-firing. I think in the end, we want to make it 100% of firing of hydrogen. It will take time. The technology is still not there yet. Mobility, I think there's, we see for fuel cells, obviously, we have people here that are engaged a lot, but probably in terms of efficiency and also durability, it could improve much, much more. And if you want to create hydrogen-based fuels, I think efficient manufacturing of these fuels is still not there as well. So that's a very important factor. Steel, again, we are now starting to see hydrogen-based steel production, but the efficiency, I think, improvement is still not there as well. So that's probably those are the three main areas around application that I am looking very, very closely at.
Thank you. But if you look at the entire hydrogen value chain from upstream to downstream, where do you see the most significant opportunities that stakeholders should not miss?
Yeah, well, it depends on who you are. And for a financial institution, obviously, financing opportunity is the biggest opportunity for finance for us. And if that's the case, for upstream production, I think a lot of countries like, obviously India, China, Australia that have abundant renewable capacity, they have a big potential and well positioned to produce green hydrogen at scale. So that's a big opportunity. And in the midstream, again, ships, ports, cross-border transportation, and those are for cross-border transportation. And if it's domestic transportation, it would be pipelines and tanks. These are also areas that would need very, very large investments as well. Downstream, I think the largest sector or industry will be, again, in the mobility sector. These would include fuel cells, obviously, but hydrogen tanks, and also refueling infrastructure. I think the Korean government has come up with saying that they would be creating 1,200 refueling stations by 2040. And these could be not just for vehicles, but they could be a hydrogen hub for various industries as well. So that's an opportunity.
And how is your company, SMBC, participating in this development of the hydrogen economy? What kind of support are you providing?
Right now, frankly, there aren't a lot of lending, actual closing opportunities. I mean, we are more seeing opportunities around debt advisory. I think we've heard the word bankability a lot today. So bankability studies, we do provide letter of intent kind of opportunities. So that's one. Those are areas that we do provide support right now. We have seen some M&A advisory opportunities as well. So that's an area. And in Asia, these tends to be in India, Singapore, or Japan, and also and, uh, and in Malaysia as well. So these are the areas that we have seen recently. We also are a lead contributor to creating a hydrogen fund. This is basically an equity fund. The fund has now invested into, I think it was 3 companies, Infinium and 12. These are both in the US that create e-fuel, and Gravity, which is a French company building a plant to create hydrogen-based steel. So that's an area that we are focusing on as well. We also are involved in a lot of industry roundtables, for instance, to participate in South Korea's CHPS and Japan's CFD program, and Singapore's ammonia value chain as well.
Thank you. I guess let's move back to Ms. Jiang from CATL. I guess CATL plays a very vital role in the lithium battery supply chain and value chain. CATL has a huge influence over many industry players. So, Mr. Jiang, what challenges do you think still exist in the lithium battery value chain?
From the value chain perspective, as I mentioned, globally, we've seen the attention to climate change is very high, and that promotes the faster growth of low carbon product demand. To reach the whole carbon reduction goal. And lithium battery industry has also played a very important role in lowering the carbon consumption. And CATL has been focusing on power battery and storage battery product. And as an emerging industry in the past decade, over a decade experience, we can see the growth and development. We've experienced challenges and difficulties. But lithium battery technology still is not mature enough. But after many years of application in consumer products and large applications, it is not easy to achieve the safety and technology index improvement. So we have been, as the upstream industry, actively promoting technology innovation and improve the safety and lifespan of the product as well as the energy density. So at the same time, we improved the performance and capability of our own product. At the same time, it reduced the cost, and it brings large-scale applications. And this will make the commercialization of the product easier and easier. The second challenge is the supervision principles and commercialization model. In emerging eras such as EV or energy storage area, there are a lot of government policy influence or impacts. Earlier, we mentioned about the subsidy policies and guiding policies. And in terms of the energy storage application, there's also a need of policy guidance. And we've also experienced the policy changes gradually in this process. But the resistance is very strong because the demand in the market is very strong. In China, we've seen the subsidy of the Chinese government reducing, but the demand and development of the battery industry is very strong. So that shows the energy and the vitality.
So as we push toward the global decarbonization goals, how can CATL help in this transition? And what kind of collaboration or support would you need to go even beyond?
对，我觉得这是非常好的。
I think this is a very good question. Reducing the carbon or decarbonization is not something one company can do. It takes the whole industry or whole value chain to collaborate. You're calling for open innovation. That means through our own four innovations, in material systems, in system architecture, in restriction innovation and business model innovation. But it's not enough for us to do it alone. We need collaboration of the whole industry chain, upstream and downstream, so that we can form an alliance to break the barriers of the whole industry, to share the knowledge, research, resources and capabilities, and capture the opportunity so that we can co-create, and promote the whole industry's greenization.
Fear that building a scalable renewables in Asia is no longer a distant dream, but a fast approaching reality. With that, I'd like to thank you so much, Mr. Takanashi-san and Mr. Jiang from CATL. Thanks for your sharing us with your insight and vision. It's been an enjoyable discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.